To all our good morning, good afternoon to all our members. I'm Dr. Anupama Gotimukula. I'm president of AAPI. And greetings to all. Welcome Dr. Rakesh Chandra and Dr. Sid Chandra for being our excellent speakers of this very important topic today. And thanks to Dr. Amit Chakravarti, our CME chair and moderator of the session today. Thanks for bringing us excellent talks today. And today is September 11th, and we all know 20 years ago what happened. So in honor and in memory of the victims and the survivors, can we all just stay silent for just a minute in honor, in memory of them? Thank you. And let's start the CME talk. Medical profession is one of the most noble professions, and we are so lucky to be in this profession. But today, the patient-doctor relationship has become much more formal and more structured. So the words, what you hear, you learn from your mistakes, is less and less honored in this current healthcare system. The best way to handle the medical legal problems or issues is by preventing them. So let us all hear today from Dr. Rakesh Chandra and Dr. Siddharth Chandra about the topic today, troubled waters in safe harbors, avoiding legal pitfalls, fraud and abuse, a practical guide for the healthcare practitioners. Over to you, Dr. Amit Chakravarti, the CME chair and moderator of today's session. Thank you.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining. Today's webinar is a very, very special webinar. And this is a webinar which everybody in every specialty should join. Who is at risk for this? Everyone. What do you do? This is something which is alien to us. We all are physicians. We know what to do when we are faced with problems with when we have problems with medical stuff, but we don't know what to do. Let's say what if feds come in and they walk into your office. What do you do? What do you tell your staff to do? And you know, Dr. Rakesh Chandra and his son will introduce us to what to do to be prepared in these kind of things. What are the best options to combat if this happens to you? How do you approach it to get a better outcome? And most importantly, also, he will also discuss some real cases which has happened to our physicians and our our colleagues, and if they would have handled it differently, we would have had a better outcome. Okay, so so I will take this opportunity to introduce both Dr. Chandra and Dr. Sid. So, Dr.
Is that from your phone? Like, what's that noise coming from your?
No, it's fine. So basically, the noise is gone. So basically, Dr. Chandra, let me just introduce Dr. Chandra right now. Dr. Chandra is a good friend of mine. He's been with me. I've known him for the last 30 years. He's a graduate of All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, in India. He did his internship at the University of Chicago Hospital and his psychiatry residency at Royal College of Psychiatrists in London, England. He completed his psychiatry residency and fellowship at Johns Hopkins Hospital and Johns Hopkins University. He has a law degree from Delhi University and an advanced law degree in health law from Loyola University School of Medicine, Institute for Health Law in Chicago, Illinois. He has worked for the Illinois Department of Corrections, where he was a psychiatrist at TAMS Correctional Center, Illinois Supermax Prison from 1997 to 2007. He currently works for the Illinois Department of Corrections, Juvenile Justice System, Christopher Rural Health Corporation, El Dorado, Illinois, Gateway Foundation in Carbondale, Illinois, and Jackson Practice Medical Center in Mayfield, Kentucky. He lives in Southern Illinois and continues to treat patients for drug and alcohol addiction through his company called RASIC Complete Recovery, where he serves as the president and the medical director. And I will also take this opportunity to introduce his son, who is, his name is Sid, and Dr. Siddharth Chandra is a graduate of Southern Illinois University, that's SIU. He did his residency at SIU Springfield in psychiatry and internal medicine and graduated magna cum laude in 2019. He's a board certified in psychiatrist. He's worked at OSF in Ottawa, Illinois, and an inpatient unit from 2019 to 2021. He currently works with Christopher Rural Health in El Dorado, Jackson Purchase Medical Center in Kentucky, RASIC Complete Recovery in Carbondale, and has been assigned to the position of medical director at the Community Counseling Center at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He's a skilled physician with experience in management of a full range of addiction and psychiatric condition. He continues to provide outpatient addiction recovery and psychiatric services, as well as inpatient psychiatric care in Southern Illinois, Missouri, and Kentucky. In his free time, Sid enjoys living the life of a car enthusiast and as well spending time with his family, friends, and animals. So without further ado, this is an extremely important and extremely knowledgeable, I have got a knowledgeable faculty who will introduce us to this rare and a very, very informative lecture. I hope all of you enjoy. Please put your questions in the chat box and we'll ask him at the end of the case. Initially, Dr. Chandra will take it from here. Dr. Rakesh Chandra, you, the podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amit. And thank you, Dr. Anupama, for allowing us to be here to present this very important topic to the RP members. It is a very important topic. And as I was preparing for this topic with pressure from Dr. Amit, because I'm sitting in India, I felt very nostalgic. I felt a bit sad. You see, what happens is this, that we are, as Dr. Amit said, very knowledgeable in medicine, but we don't know a lot about business. We don't know a lot about law. And we think that just being good physicians is all that is needed. And yet, as you will see from the talk that I'm going to give you, we can land up in all sorts of problems. And when it happens, we are completely lost. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, and that is legal problems, potential legal problems that we physicians can get into. How do we get selected and end up in those problems? What can we do about those problems? And ultimately, of course, how do we carry on with our life and carry on and survive and even thrive? But before I do that, I want to tell you my story in very brief. It was the 4th of December, 1984, which of course dates me back much, much earlier than a lot of you. But it was a very nice day, and I was on my way to a hospital called South Baltimore General Hospital. I was going to pick up my mother from the airport, and the hospital happened to be on the way. So I briefly stopped at the hospital just to see if there were any acute cases and to pick up some mail from the doctor's lounge. And one of the doctors passed me and he said, "Hey, Chandra, some weird guy has been walking around the hospital looking for you." So I thought maybe it was one of my patients, because I am a psychiatrist. And I don't mean to describe my patient as weird, but sometimes the other doctors joked about it. So anyway, I went into the doctor's lounge and there was this strange guy. He was very well built and muscular. He was obviously carrying a weapon in his holster because you could see the outline. And he was very excited. He was hopping from one foot to the other. He was, besides himself. And when I walked in, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, are you Chandra?" I said, "Yes." And he reached into his pocket and gave me an envelope. And I said, "What is this?" And he said, "Well, read it." And so I remember it was a Monday morning and I read it, and it said criminal investigation, and it had a list of patients. And my God, I was shocked. I said, what is this about? And he said, "Well, they want to investigate you." I said, "Really? But what?" "Oh," he said, "nothing much. It's just a routine investigation. You shouldn't worry about it. There's nothing, but this is how we have to do it." And so I read the date, and the document was dated the previous Friday. So I said to him, "This is dated Friday. Why are you giving it to me on Monday?" And he smiled at me so benignly and he said, "Doc, I didn't want to ruin your weekend, so I thought you could have a good weekend and I'm giving it to you on Monday." Well, there was nothing benign about it. That started my journey. And the journey ultimately led to law school, to a higher degree in legal medicine. It led to twists and turns, which I will share with you as we go along. But suffice to say that if I had heard my lecture 35 years ago today, I would have handled it totally differently. I could have saved thousands of dollars in costs. I would have avoided a lot of heartache and problems. But unfortunately, like a lot of us think, I never thought that I would ever run into problems like that. I had a big practice. I was a very good clinician. I never have had any complaints from any patients about anything. Never had a complaint with the licensing board or anything, and suddenly I get this. So as I was writing this, I said to myself, "Gosh, if I had known or I'd heard my lecture, it would have been so good." So this is very important, and I would urge you to listen to what I'm saying. The reason this is very important is as follows. I want to make several points, which I will keep covering as we go along. So one of the most important things is that if you think that you are not going to have any problems, you're very mistaken. Anyone, no matter how good a physician you are, this is not about your ability as a physician. If you have a problem with your physician type abilities, either your licensing board or your hospital board or someone will contact you. This is about the legal side, the billing, the practice, the business side of what you do that is at stake. And unfortunately, as we said before, a lot of doctors don't know anything about it, and like I did not, and ended up in problems. One more thing I'd like to mention, which is a very sort of sad again in a way, is that this talk, I know a lot of you, as I look at you, you're much younger than me, but as I look at this, I remember several years ago, I mean, I would say it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I went to the RP board and I said to them that this is a very important topic. It's a very serious thing. And I remember there were two board members, I'm not going to mention their names, but they were pretty off-putting. And they said to me, "The doc, this happens to other physicians, it doesn't happen to us." Unfortunately, it did happen to them. And I did reach out to them about this talk and try to tell them that we're going to do this talk. But had they heard what I'm going to say, there would not have been any problems, or some mild problems, but they would have handled it. What happened is that the husband won his case, and the wife, who was also a prominent board member, pleaded guilty. And now there are all questions about jail time and so on. So it is very important. It can happen to you, and I think you should listen carefully. I would like to just give you some disclaimers. And one of the disclaimers is that it's not a simple topic. It's not something that you can just understand everything in an hour or 2 hours. it's very complicated, it's very detailed. Every little thing has legal nuances. So I've simplified it in a way that you can hear me and you can understand something, but it needs a lot of research, it needs a lot of follow-up. So I won't be able to go into details, but I just want to mention to you that people do brush it off. They think it won't happen to them till one day they get this surprise knock at the door and they end up with legal problems. So I want to make 4 very important points that I'm going to keep repeating through this whole lecture. One of the most important points is this. The first one is that if you are going to practice medicine today, in today's legal environment, as Dr. Anupama said, the whole environment has changed. The patient-doctor relationship, which used to be so sacred, has completely changed. Managed care has changed. Hospital privileges and things like that have changed. So it has come to a point where the whole system of medicine has changed. And I can bet you, every one of us who is practicing is guaranteed that somewhere in their career, they're going to have contact with legal problems in one form or the other. And again, as we talk about the guidelines, if you follow them, you will, of course, have to go through it, but you will survive. You will eventually be able to thrive. And what I didn't know was that, okay, so you have a legal problem, you deal with it, but at the end of it, you can fight and get your license back, you can get your records expunged, and you can go back to practicing again. So that's the most important point I want to make. And the feeling that you get when someone comes to you and says, here, it's a criminal complaint against you, you feel, oh my God, I'm not a good doctor, I'm not this, but that is not true again. You don't change at all. They say that you have a problem, but don't listen to them. Believe yourself and fight. Or, as I will tell you later, you may need to settle, but that's a point I'm going to make later. So again, the most important point is that you will have a legal problem. Anyone who thinks he does not, please send me your name. And if you don't have a legal problem, I will come and fall at your feet and say, my God, you're a real guru. So it's not, everyone's going to have it. The second point I want to make is that, you see, when someone shows up at your door, an investigator, or you get a complaint from the state's attorney, our initial reaction is like doctors, that we want to pick up the phone and explain what happened and explain it away. No, it wasn't like this. I didn't do the billing. You see, I have a billing company and they were doing it. We want to explain it, but here's the thing that you need to remember. You cannot explain it away. Okay, you cannot. Once you've got the problem, you've got a tiger by the tail, and be patient, don't be in a hurry, because you cannot solve it. It cannot be that you get the complaint, you call them, you go to their office and explain everything, and they say, oh yes, Dr. Chandra, you're so wonderful, and it's not a problem. So the second point is that if something like this happens, you own the problem, and delay is good, but you cannot explain your problem away. You cannot also just pay something and make it go away. You have to sit back and say, look, I've got a problem. It's like a mild cancer. There's a treatment, and I'm going to have to go through the treatment. There is no magical cure. So that is the second most important point that I want to stress to everybody. The third point I want to make is this, that if you analyze most of the legal cases, you will find that it takes anywhere between 3 and 5 years to resolve, from the day that you got the first letter to the time that you are back in practice and everything has fallen into place. The minimum time it's going to take is 3 to 5 years. So if you think that you can sort it out in a week or 6 weeks or whatever, not going to happen. Don't delude yourself. You've got a problem. It's a mild cancer. There's some radiation treatment. There's some medication. There are things that you'll have to do, but it's not going to go away, much as you wish it would. The third point I want to make is this, that you will spend a lot of money, 300 to 500,000 at least. You know, if you go to a lawyer who's a healthcare lawyer and you talk to him, the first thing he's going to ask you is, that I want a retainer of 50,000 or 100,000. The minute they hear doctor, believe me, their mouth opens wide and you have to pay. And the better the lawyer, and as I will tell you later, when you select the person, the better it will be because, you know, according to the lawyers, I've learned that the definition of a good client is as follows: a very, very rich doctor in very, very deep shit, you know? So that's the definition of a good client. And guess what? We're all good clients, because the minute the lawyer saw me, he said, Doc, you know, it's going to cost you, and that's back 35 years ago. He said, it's going to cost you $100,000. Without that, we can't even start. So you're going to spend 3 to 5 years and you're going to be spending a lot of money. That's the cost of doing business. Try to be proactive and not let it happen, as I'm going to tell you. But if it happens, it's your problem and you got to deal with it. But don't be impatient. Don't be in a hurry. Again, we doctors want things to happen. We're Indians. We want everything to resolve quickly. Not going to happen. The last point I want to make, which is the most important point, like the first one, and that is this: that if the problem happens, believe it or not, you will be practicing again, you will be thriving again, and life will be okay. I'm a classic example. I did go to law school. I took time off. I did all kinds of things. But also in the process of doing that, I discovered myself. I discovered that we are doctors and going to law school is not difficult for us at all, that we learn very quickly. And when you have your own case, believe me, you're so motivated. You listen to every lecture, you make every point. And it was one very small point that I heard in one of the lectures, which I went and fought with the licensing board. I not only got my license, but I had the records expunged. And here I am, along with Sid. We have a big practice. We're doing well. So don't give up. Don't get disheartened. You have a problem, but don't say, no, now I'm going to retire. Now I'm going to give up everything. Maybe if it happens to you and you're at a stage of your life where you want to do that, it's fine. But don't get disheartened. You will eventually get your license back and you'll be practicing again. So that's a very important thing. Before we go any further, I'd just like to tell you something. You know, it isn't as if we doctors don't do silly things. It isn't as if there are doctors who don't actually commit crimes. We all look at ourselves and say, I would never do that. But I'm going to ask Dr. Sid now to tell you about a case which happened very recently in Illinois, and about a doctor who did something very, very stupid. And I'm trying to even figure out today that why the heck did he do it? And he ended up going to prison for 5 years, federal prison. He ended up losing his practice. He ended up losing his license. And now he's trying to get it back, and he's trying to get on with his life. Of course, when this happens, your friends abandon you, his wife divorced him, and so on. So I'll turn it over to Sid to talk about this very important case of Dr. Shet. And again, I'm naming his name because I want you guys to go back and pull out the case, because it's got volumes and volumes, and read about it. And if you figure out why he did what he did, tell me, because I'm at a loss to understand why would someone do that. Sid.
You got muted, Dr. Chandra.
Unmute yourself, Dr. Sid.
Dr. Chandra, can you unmute yourself? Dr. Chandra? Dr. Chandra, unmute yourself. You got muted.
Okay, thank you. It's not letting me unmute. Okay, so the case I was going to mention is the one of Dr. Saif in Chicago. He's a very prominent cardiologist, went to a great residency, very nice guy who would cover at multiple hospitals. And whenever other Indian cardiologists or other cardiologists in general would go on vacation or were gone, he would gladly offer to see their patients. And during the time they were gone, he would cover the patients, he would take good care of them, and things were going very well. Unfortunately, when a lot of these patients, when the physicians returned, the patients would report, oh, you know, doctor, I'm getting all these big bills on my EOB, and I don't know where they're from. I don't know who this doctor is who's billing them. And the way it turned out is, you know, one of the doctors looked at it, and a lot of people brushed it off, said, oh, it's just a billing error, it's just a mistake, don't worry about it. But one of the doctors was getting bothered a lot by patients, so he looked into it and he saw that, oh, you know, this Dr. Saith is the one who is doing all this billing. So he went and talked to him, and you know, Dr. Saith said, oh, you know, send the patients here, it's just a mistake, I'll resolve it, no big deal. And so it went fine. He sent the patients and some of them went well, but eventually the doctor got worried because it kept happening. So he started looking into it, and he discovered that, oh, you know, a lot of these things are not even being done. No procedures are being done. These notes are being, you know, these visits are being billed for this highest level, but the patient's never seen this doctor. And so he initiated a lawsuit with a lawyer, a qui tam lawsuit, and they looked into it, and they discovered that this physician had been manufacturing records in order to bill large amounts. And over the span of several years, he billed about $20 million that they had found was fraudulent. And, you know, in future investigations, he ended up, getting caught, pled guilty. They recovered a lot of the money, but he admitted the guilt and went to federal prison, went to prison for 5 years. But in that time, you know, there was a lot of information that said that he spent more time manufacturing records and producing all this data than actually doing any work or seeing the patients. You know, he had a lot of family issues, and it was one of those things, like he was a very successful cardiologist, or could have been, you know, good town, great training. You know, if he had just spent the time doing the actual work, probably would have made as much money, if not more. But he got into a lot of trouble like that.
So again, the point from this case is this, that it isn't like doctors don't do crazy stuff. And like Dr. Sid said, this doctor was a very well-known cardiologist. He could have made much more. He spent more time. I think it's more difficult to sit in your office and manufacture a record than to actually see the patient and do the work. So I have no idea. And as I said, if someone ever finds out why did he do that when he didn't need to, it's amazing. He ended up paying 13 million back to the government. 7 million had gone. They put a lien against him for various things. And it's very, very sad. But on that, I wanted to show you the flip side, that people do actually do crazy criminal things. But why they do it, I have no idea, because there's no need for us physicians to even think of doing that for the small reward that it gets, because the penalty.
The patient had received Levinox preoperatively, period, as the stone was in the ureter.
Amit,
I decided to proceed with.
Amit, mute yourself. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like to move on to the fact that how do you get selected for a legal review? One day, why does someone show up at your office? There are many reasons, you know, why you get selected. One of the most common things is that a patient goes and complains to the licensing board or to the state's attorney's office or the Better Business Bureau, saying that this doctor has sent me this bill and he's never seen me, or he saw me for 5 minutes. That is the complaint, and you have, and I've got this big bill and I don't know why or how he sent it. So that's a very common thing. Another complaint is that a disgruntled employee, you know, you fire a nurse because of whatever, and they go and complain about you, saying that I was working there, but I went and confronted the doctor about this problem and he fired me, which is often not true, but it happens a lot. Another way is that a family member, you know, you go through a bad divorce, something happens. So in addition to everything else, they complain about you as a doctor and file something saying that your practice is totally fraudulent or you're doing this or that. That's something that happens. But two areas where reporting is very important is that if a hospital reports you, or if a licensing board reports you, or if a colleague who's in the same field and has special knowledge reports you, that's how you end up being recognized as someone who's of interest. Now, you have to look at it from the point of view of the state's attorney's office or the federal attorney's office. They get hundreds of complaints every day. and they don't just jump on it and act on it. In fact, one of the prosecutors, when I was doing the LLM training, a lot of the prosecutors were doing that in health law too. And one of them said to me that, Doc, if we want to nail a doctor, we can nail anybody because there's always, such a big practice, something or the other you can find, nail them. But unless it's a blatant criminal thing, we don't go after them. And really, I found that about 99.9% of the prosecutors were very honest, very hardworking people. And despite the fact that when they come after you, you think that, my God, they're after me and they're discriminating, they're not. A good prosecutor will never prosecute an honest mistake as a criminal thing. But there's that 0.1% who will, because after all, prosecuting petty criminals and people like that, you get a doctor, it's a sensational case, often there's a lot of money involved, and so they will do it. But most of the time they have high integrity and they won't do it. So that's very important for you to remember, that they are ethical people and they will not do it. I have a list here of the kind of complaints that occur, and I'll briefly go through it. It gives the percentage of cases that are reported, ultimately how many are followed up, and so on. This is an analysis we did some time ago, and it's pretty much consistent this way, that a patient will go and say that they billed me, but they did not provide these services. Or they'll say that some peer review committee will say that you did this procedure, but it was not necessary. And so it was overutilization of services. Another one is that you falsified the document. You provided the service on such a day, or you did not provide the service, but you document that you did, and so on. Upcoding, you provided a service at a lower level. You saw the patient for 15 minutes and you make it seem you saw them for 1 hour. You saw the patient for something minor and you reported the cost in a different way, or you went to a seminar and they said, doctor, if you come to our seminar, we'll show you how to improve your receivables by 40%. And you use that method, and guess what? It was not legal and it got you into trouble. Another way which you get selected is very important, and that is there is a system called SURS, S-U-R-S. And SURS is a system where, I'll try to explain in simple terms. In psychiatry, there's a procedure for a code for everything. So if you see a patient for 15 minutes, there's a code. If you see them for half an hour, there's a code. And if you see them for 1 hour, there's a code. So what they do is they look at your billing and they look at the codes that you're using, and they compare that code to the local physicians in the area and the state level physicians and the national physicians. And here's an example of something like that, that if you look at the blue column, this person is doing 80% of that very high code, whereas the actual is under 20%. And then if you look at the other side, the national comparison of various states is like this, and you're standing out, guess what's going to happen? Someone is going to come to your office to say, what the heck are you doing? Now, just because they've come doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Okay, you may be that person who sees everyone for 1 hour every day, and that's the kind of practice you have. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can back it up, if you have documentation, if your scheduling shows that this is what you're doing, there's nothing wrong. So don't be scared of doing what you're doing. But if someone shows up, be prepared to back it up. Dr. Chakravarti and I were talking earlier, and there's a particular procedure he does. He's the only doctor in that whole area, and he's the only one who does it. So obviously, if you look at his utilization, it'll be way out in comparison. But if someone comes to his office, he can show that I'm the only doctor in the area, I'm doing this procedure, and sure, your graph looks like this, but here's what it is, here's the records, go check with the patient. And chances are that they will do that, they'll go back and forth, and eventually, as I said, they are very honest people. They will let you go. They won't do anything because they know this is a case they can't fight. Also remember, unless they are absolutely sure of your case, they have limited resources. They don't want to fight a case and lose a lot of money just to prove a point. So often they will not go after you if you can show documentation that what you're doing is legal and it is necessary. And that's why I said troubled waters and safe harbors, because these are safe harbors that you are able to do certain things which on the face of it seem against the law, but you are doing it for a particular reason. You know, it may be that you have an MRI machine and you're the only doctor in town who has an MRI machine, and you have to use that machine because there's nothing else. You were forced to buy it. And so now they're showing that you've got so many cases going, they'll come, but when they see the situation, they will leave you alone. They may not even contact you. They may just do their own investigation and quietly go away and you'll never know about it. But often they will come to your office, they will present this thing, you'll go get frightened, you'll try to explain it. Absolutely wrong. Someone shows up, I'm going to tell you in a minute what you should do. So this is very important, that these are the ways in which you get selected. But it doesn't matter how you get selected. Once you're selected, you have a case and you have to deal with it. Now, what happens? What do you do when a prosecutor or somebody shows up at your office? Well, you have to understand one thing. Legal cases are, of course, based on right and wrong, but it's not all that. When you get a letter from a prosecutor's office, when do you think you'll get the letter? Do you think you'll get it Monday morning? Do you think you'll get it Tuesday morning? No. Most likely, the letter will arrive Friday at about 11 o'clock, okay? And you read it and say, oh my God. And there it is, that if you need any clarification or want to know what this is about, please call this number. And so as a doctor, you quickly go and dial the number. What do you think? The prosecutor is waiting. They says, hello, Dr. Rakesh. Yes, yes. This is what it's about. You know what will happen? He's not there. And you leave a message. You leave a message with his secretary. And guess what? Monday morning, when you walk in, he'll call you and say, hello. No, he won't. He won't call you for a week. Why is that? Why does it arrive on a Friday? And why is that? Because they teach you in law school that all this matter, of course, it's about law, but it's also about psychology. They want to soften you up. If they can send you a letter, like they sent Dr. Sheth, they just went to investigate him and he at once broke down and he confessed that this is what it is, this is what I'm doing. It was a slam dunk for the prosecutor. So they have limited resources, and with the least amount of effort that they can get such a benefit, that's what they want. They want to frighten you. The prosecutor comes in and the guy who's with him has a gun, and he'll open his jacket sort of like this and show you that he has a gun, and he'll be very nice, but the other guy will say, Doc, you know, I'd be careful because, you know, you could end up going to jail. And you're saying, jail, what have I done to go to jail? But there it is. So when the prosecutor shows up or investigator shows up, one of the things they always tell you, you say, hey, what is this about? And he says, oh, it's nothing, it's just routine. What is routine? It's routine for you if you get an investigation every day. It's not routine at all, but he'll try to lower your guard and he'll hope that you'll say something. You'll say, oh, but I don't do this or this is, you don't have to say a thing. Only thing you have to say is this: thank you, and please step out of my office, and my lawyer will contact this lawyer. That's it. If you want to be proactive, which I'm going to tell you in a few minutes, you will have a lawyer on your staff because that is something you know. I mean, I'm not saying hire a full-time attorney, but don't wait till you get into trouble to find an attorney. You should have a good healthcare attorney whose number you have on your phone. You should have a good licensing attorney, which you should have in your phone. Send them $100, $200 as a retainer, talk to them for a few minutes, introduce yourself, and have it on your phone so that when that happens, you say, thank you, Mr. So-and-so. Now get out of my office, leave the papers, and my attorney, Mr. So-and-so, will call your thing. What do you think he's going to do? Is he going to arrest you? Is he going to say, no, you were very rude, I'm going to fix you? He has no power. He's just an errand boy. But they want to intimidate you. They know you're a doctor. They know you're going to get frightened, and they frighten you into admitting all kinds of things. I know doctors, they walked in and they said, your prescribing practices are this, you need to give up your DA license, and the doctor signs away the license. And guess what? He didn't have to do it, but he got so scared that he just gave it up. whenever you get into a legal situation, whether it's this or anything else, you get arrested on the or stopped on the roadside and the guy says, no, I'm going to arrest you. You need to just say one thing, and that is, I want to talk to my lawyer. And it's the same thing here. I want to talk to my lawyer. You should tell your staff that. At my office, we had a rehearsal every few months, and we recently had the DEA come in to check our books because we do Suboxone, which is a controlled substance. The guy was there for 15 minutes. He was the most polite guy, but it went exactly like our rehearsal. And I know it sounds crazy, but you need to train your staff, because again, they come in, they'll say, you all are good people, because often they're locals, they're Americans, so on. And they look at them and say, you're good people, but we're trying to nail this doctor who's done a lot of bad stuff. You know, they'll say all kinds of things. So your staff needs to be trained and say, no, we're not going to do that. Now, one of the cases that it happened, the prosecutor showed up, and it was a winter morning. It was in Wisconsin. And this doctor was so concerned, he brought them into his office. He gave them hot coffee, and then he left them with all the records lying around. If someone comes in and they have a subpoena, you, of course, should call your lawyer and have someone from your lawyer's office come in. You should train your staff to at once switch the cell phone and start recording the whole thing, because that is your right to do that. And if they have a subpoena for a record, you cannot deny that. Put them in a room where there is nothing, maybe a patient room, maybe a conference room where there's nothing except those 2 records or 5 records that they are asking to see. And they should not be allowed to take anything from your office unless you have made copies of it and can keep the copy. They cannot say, okay, we're seizing these records and taking them and pull a gun or something. They can't do that. They do misbehave a lot. They try to, again, as I said, because these are police background people, and they want to push you around. You're a criminal, you're a doctor, and they do all kinds of things. So you and your staff have to be prepared that if someone shows up, it's their right to do that, but you do not have to serve them coffee. You don't have to be polite. You don't have to get into a fight with them, but you should let them know that you're in control. Call your lawyer's office, or have someone record it, or do both, so that they can't do anything, and that is perfectly within your right. The other thing is that when they show up with a search warrant, you have to read the search warrant carefully. Don't start trembling and say, here's my office, and take everything. Read the search warrant. Often the search warrant is something called overly broad. They want checks from 10 years ago. They want this and that. So the first thing you need to do is to say, no, we can't. It's a busy practice. I can't stop everything to just give you all this. You need to give my lawyer time so that he can put it together and give it to you. What are they going to do? They're going to arrest you? They won't. They'll try to say, no, what we want it now, have one of your employees do it. No, you should say, we have our first responsibility to the patients, and we're not going to do it. They will back off, but we get scared. We are not trained for all this, you know, but it's a reality. They have a gun, but you know something? They're not going to come and shoot you. They can't. You're not a criminal unless proven otherwise. So my thought is, don't be scared. Train your staff. Again, as I said, I'm going to show you how you should have a lawyer if you're going to practice, how you should have an accountant, how you should have everything. Same way, train your staff. You know, hey guys, we're going to get hit. And we trained our staff. We told them the DA is going to come in. They're going to be big guys. They're going to come in and they'll flash whatever. The guys came in. It was exactly that. There were 2 huge guys. I think they played football or something, but they were big. And my secretary said to them, stop, made them sit in one side. We did not offer them coffee or anything. They came in, they sat down with me. They asked for 5 records. We just brought those 5 records. We went through each one of them. They were there 15 minutes. They looked at it. They said, Doc, do you keep any controlled substance in your clinic? I said, no. And they just went off. And they were very nice, very polite. But we made it clear that we were recording everything, and that our lawyer, I had called them that morning, and I said, by chance, if there's a problem, I may have to bother you. And he said, just call me and I'll be over. It'll take 15 minutes. Nothing happened, you know. So be prepared, prepare your staff. You should not be pushed around. Don't get intimidated, but don't get into a fight with them, because that will not serve any purpose. Now, the next thing that happens is this, that so now you have got a letter and it says that you have been charged with such and such, okay? So you have to look at who is the letter from, just because you got a letter from an investigator, what are they investigating? Are they investigating your billing? Are they an investigator from the licensing board? Are they an investigator from the public services thing looking at your office plumbing? Just because you have an investigator come in doesn't mean that you're in trouble. And a lot of the times when something like that happens, chances are that you will resolve it, but it's a process. And the process is take the papers, don't be polite, but don't be rude. Read the papers carefully, call your attorney right away and send them to him, and then let him handle it. If someone calls you, say, I'm sorry, Mr. So-and-so is handling this for me. Here is his number, and don't say anything. I have something here which I'll show you. It says that even a fish would not get into trouble if it did not open its mouth. You know, because if you open a mouth and you're a fish and you get hooked, you'll be nailed. So the same thing with you. It is not a crime not to say anything, but sometimes in our stupidity trying to explain something or settle something, we end up talking too much and saying the wrong thing and getting into trouble. Also, don't lie to a prosecutor or his investigator, because lying, you may be cleared of the whole matter, but you could be nailed for lying, and that is a crime in itself. So if you don't say anything, they can't open your mouth and make you speak. But if you do speak, please don't tell any lies, you know, because you may win the case, but on this thing, they will nail you. There's no getting away from that. So again, you're scared, you're upset, your office is scared, keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. You will not get into trouble. Now, what I want to talk about is this, the best data, like I had mentioned before, or the SURS, S-U-R-S system. All of us do procedures, we build third parties, and they do look at that very closely. At this point, I would say to some of you that if you are not interested in getting picked up because of that, because of overutilization, whatever, there are hundreds of things you can do as a doctor which don't require billing from third party, don't require Medicare, you can get a job on a contractual service, you can get a salaried job, you can join the VA. And I know a lot of doctors who started out with practices and so on, and something happened and they said, you know what, we don't need these hassles. I'm going to go and join the VA, or that's perfectly fine. You can do many things. But if you are going to practice, then this is something you have to be prepared. And so you have to look at yourself and say that, look, am I the kind of person who can handle this? There are rewards in being your own boss and having your own practice and so on, but there are these kind of problems. And a number of people that I have talked to and given the lecture, they've often gotten back to me and said, you know what, I said the heck with it. I joined the prison system and I joined the VA, and I'm making a very good living doing that. So that may be one thing. I know some of the doctors, they joined a locum service and now they have a lot of free time. They take long holidays, but also they tell me that ultimately the revenue that they're getting from what they're doing compared to the practice and the hassles, hiring the staff, maintaining an office is pretty similar. So if you are someone who doesn't have the stomach for all this, then seriously would ask you to look at options and go for something like this. So it's just a suggestion that I want to point out to you. Now, another thing is that there are a lot of doctors. I mean, I know all of you are listening here and saying, yeah, if I get something, but there are a lot of people who get these letters, who get these contacts, and they don't take them seriously. Any letter, any contact with the state's attorney, the licensing board, whatever, is very serious, and you should take it very seriously. And when I say seriously, as I said, you should contact a lawyer, you should let them handle it. Don't go, it's like an audit, you know, an income tax audit. Chances are you don't want to go yourself, you send your CPA and you don't even try to meet them if necessary. So it's the same thing here. Don't go, don't let the lawyer handle it. If you've got a good lawyer, he will not let you talk to them and your staff. And they will often try to catch the staff after hours, or they will do all kinds of things, but you should instruct them that by law, they do not have to talk to anybody, and you must not let them give you information. And often they'll say to the staff that you're good people. We don't want to do anything with you. That's what they told my staff. But we just want this doctor because he is a criminal. You know, all kinds of statements which were not true, and they were very loyal. They did stand by, but it can be a problem. So any contact should be taken very, very seriously. You know, and again, as I said to you before, every investigation has a life of its own. You cannot explain away, you cannot, you know, you've got it. And once you've got it, you have to see it through, because if you stop at any point, you are going to be nailed. Now, on the other hand, suppose, for example, and we're going to give you an example of a case which the doctor's practice was very sloppy and his billing practices were sloppy. He was not a criminal, but he was just very sloppy and his whole style was very lackadaisical. So if you're looking at something, the first thing you should do is this, that do an internal investigation, okay, by yourself. Okay, maybe get somebody who's an auditor or CPA or something to help you review everything and make a chart. For example, if they're saying that you have billed for 30 sessions, but your documentation shows only 15, then it's a problem. So you need to do an internal investigation and see, is there a problem? Because often, even though we are careful, the staff may not be careful, you may not have been monitoring them. In my own case, what happened is that I had very inexperienced staff. I had a billing service that used to do my billing, and for 8 years, it went very well. The guy used to send me the statements every month, and I got a bill, the practice was doing well. And then for some reason, they decided to close the practice. And so, of course, being the resourceful person I am, I went to their office as it was closing, and I said, who's the person in your office who actually does my billing? And they pointed to this very young girl, 22 or 23. And of course, I said to her, hey, you know, do you know? Oh, she said, I've been doing your billing for 7 years. I know everything. So I hired her to come and work with me. And when I hired her, she said, well, I need some help. And so she said, my mother-in-law is looking for a job, and I hired her also. And of course, they said to me, Doc, you go practice medicine and leave the billing to us. And guess what? I ended up in a mess because this girl didn't know what she was doing. She was doing stuff, but the guy who owned the business, he was monitoring her, he was correcting her, he was telling her what to do and making sure that everything was right. He was checking it against the documentation. She was told, she called the office and somebody told her that the billing has to be in the name of the doctor, which is true, but it should say services provided by so-and-so therapist in the office of Dr. Chandra. And that was okay, but she billed everything as if I was seeing the patient because it was billed in the name of the doctor. And it turned out that in a 24-hour day, I was seeing 40 patients. And they wanted to know, how could you see 40 patients for 1 hour when, you know, there are only 24-hour days, you don't sleep, you don't eat, that we agree, but how could you do that? And it was not a crime, it was just a stupid mistake, which later we explained after spending 500, 600,000, they finally understood what it was. And I took a plea which said, I'm not guilty, but I know there's a mistake been made. I had to pay a huge fine. But the point is this, that it's your office and your signature. And so you have to be very careful what goes on. But the fact is that you are totally responsible. And so if you don't have the stomach for all that, get out of this, you know, get a job, get something that pays a salary and so on. So coming back to the question, now you've got this letter, how do you find a healthcare attorney? Well, one of the things is you're very lucky you're a API member. And over the last few years, what we did was we analyzed a lot of lawyers. You see, when you go to law school, one of the things they teach you is how to be confident and say, oh yeah, I know, don't worry, just leave the problem to me, doc, go back and practice and I'll take care of it. We had a doctor in Wisconsin who got into a lot of trouble. And when he saw me, he said, oh, I have the best lawyer in the country. And I said, who's that? And he said, it is Spiro Agnew, who used to be Nixon's vice president, his income tax lawyer. So I said, but what does the income tax lawyer have to do with health law? And he said, oh, he's so good, he'll take care of everything, he told me. The doctor lost his license, he paid a huge fine, and ultimately he retired. AAPI has built up a database of good lawyers who have handled cases, and we've seen what the outcome was. How were they in terms of the outcomes? How expensive were they? Did they charge fairly? What happened? Okay, so that is very important. And then the other thing is that we have a database of who has actually won the case. But in my own case, what I did was, when I went to law school, I found out that I have two problems. I have a problem with Medicaid and Medicare, and I have a problem with the licensing board. So I looked for two lawyers. One is Medicare or Medicaid lawyers who could fight it. And I interviewed a lot of lawyers, and initially I found a lawyer in a big law firm, corner office, big windows overlooking the bay, $500 an hour. He was a total idiot. Ultimately, I looked at Medicare, and I went to Medicare and I said, under the Freedom of Information Act, tell me who has appeared before you in the last 2 years and who has won a good outcome. And so they had to send me a chart, case number, lawyer, outcome. And so I found that there was a lawyer in a small one-person office in the corner of the city who had won many cases against them, in some cases completely exonerated the doctor, and he walked free. So that's how I found him. The other way I found was I went to the licensing board and I said, who appears before you a lot, who has won the cases? And again, they made a chart, and it was this lawyer who goes there all the time, and I used him. So finding the lawyer is the key, because a good person knows his stuff. You are the one paying him, just like you're buying a house or you're buying a car. You can ask, how much do you charge? How many cases have you done? What have the outcomes been? And they have to tell you. Also, there's a publication called Martindale-Hubbell. Martindale-Hubbell. They also have a website. If you go to that, every lawyer in the country is rated by his peers, so you can look up the lawyer's reputation and see what is it about, so that is the other thing that you have to look at and see how it is rating your lawyer. And again, you can ask him. So when you see a lawyer, of course, the minute he sees the doctor, like I told you in the beginning, a very, very rich person in very, very deep shit who's going to lose his license and probably go to jail, you're willing to pay anything. So the price goes up. But you can negotiate. You can say, no, I don't have that kind of money. I want to pay less, or can I pay a flat fee? You've handled so many cases. You know what it happens. If you resolve it quickly, you will win. But if it takes longer, try to get a flat fee. Try to pay in installments so that you have some control. But the important thing is you can negotiate after you find a good lawyer. Again, if you get into trouble now, my thought would be call the AAPI office, talk to Dr. Anupama, talk to Amit. There's so many people. One tendency we have, which I also had, was that when you have a problem, you want to keep quiet. No one should find out about it. Oh my God, they're charging me with this. It is a mistake. Because if you isolate yourself, you think it hasn't happened to you. And so you don't want anybody to know because nobody else has had problems. Everyone has had problems. Everyone has gone through something like this. If you talk to your colleagues, if you talk to people, they'll point you in the right direction. Again, in those days, AAPI wasn't so prominent and it wasn't there. But now if you talk to AAPI, they will point you in the right direction. I mean, you're welcome to call me. I'm not that active, but I can give you information, but just don't inundate me with calls because I'm not, that active and I'm doing other things. But the point is, don't bury your head in the sand. I learned this in a very sad way, and that is when all this was going on, I went to the Medicaid office to get all this information, and there was this black guy sitting in the corner, and he looked at me and he said, what's the problem with you, doctor? And so I told him, and he said, listen, you're not the first one who's had this problem, and you're not the last one. Just deal with it and move on, and you'll be practicing. And that day I said to myself, what an idiot, I'm never going to talk to him. But now I look back and think about his words. They were full of wisdom because that's exactly what happened. But at that moment, the prosecutor was telling me, you're going to jail and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And I was thinking, oh my God, how will I show my face in the community? What will my parents think? What will happen? But here I am. So again, don't bury your head in the sand. Talk to your colleagues, talk to people. Chances are people have had problems and we'll be able to help you. So that is another important thing. The other thing is that, look, don't give up, don't become discouraged and take a doom and gloom thing. But it is something that's going to take time. So look after your health, maintain your routine till they actually take away your license, until they convict you, you're an innocent person and you can continue with your practice. You know, if someone asks you, say, yes, it's a problem, but don't go into details. Only talk to people who can help you. Don't awfulize and tell everybody and so on. If you're getting very depressed and it's getting you down, which it would, get a therapist, talk to someone. Don't call your lawyer all the time and say, oh, you know what's happening, because remember, the lawyer's charged by the hour, every phone call. So don't waste your time and your money doing that. Let him handle it, let them deal with it. But it's a 3 to 5 year process. There's no way to shorten it. Try as much as possible to get on with your life. Just around the time this happened, I'd gotten married. And my wife said to me, why don't we go to Vegas? And why don't we do this and that? And I said, are you kidding? In this state, I'm not going to go anywhere. Now I look back and she was right, because it took that time. And she, of course, stood by me like a wonderful person she is. But, you know, looking back, I could have done all that. There was no need to sit there in a funk and say, oh my God, I'm going to end up in jail and what's going to happen. You are not going to go to jail. You're not going to, they will arrest you. Maybe they'll put handcuffs on you just to get publicity. But no, often they don't even do that. They know that you're not a criminal or something. So don't awfulize and don't give up. Keep a normal routine and get on with your life as much as possible. Conserve your money. Be very careful about what you spend on. Oh, we need to get this evidence, $500. No, but why you need it? Understand it. Try to be the one in control and budget yourself, because the lawyers will want you to spend the money hilly-nilly just for the heck of it. You need to keep a tight rein on everything. So that's something that you need to do when that happens. So I'm going to tell you about one more case, and then I will be happy to take questions from you. Like I said, it's a very complicated subject. It's a very long subject. All sorts of things can happen. Every case is different. But again, please remember, unless you've gone out, someone like Dr. Sheth, and done something totally crazy, which today as a psychiatrist, even I can't figure out why he did something that he was totally unnecessary. Maybe it was a sense of thrill, maybe it's a chance of getting away. And if anyone ever knows him, I'm curious to know why would someone do that. So I'm going to talk about a case of a doctor in Philadelphia called Dr. Maitroni. Now, Dr. Maitroni was a psychiatrist also, and he was a very nice guy, very personable, very happy, but very careless, very sloppy. So what happened is that he had several offices and he hired a case manager. And so when he hired the case manager, he became very attached to her. They started having an affair. And of course, his wife found out. So the wife called the state's attorney and kept pestering them that this was a problem and that they should do something about it. She didn't say anything about the affair, but she wanted him to get into trouble. So she kept pestering them, So ultimately, he sent an investigator, and the investigator found that there were a lot of sessions that they had billed for, but when he went through the documentation, it was not there. So if he billed for 30 sessions on a given day, maybe there was documentation for 10 sessions or 11 sessions, but the others weren't there. So they did what they do is a statistical analysis. They can't come in and review every chart of yours. So they take a representative sample and they do a statistical analysis. How many sessions did you bill? How much documentation was there to support it? How many days, how many hours? So they do a sort of a sample, and based on that sample, they extrapolate it to revolve your whole practice. So the doctor contacted someone and he said, look, that is BS. Why don't you get somebody to review your whole practice? So he very quickly went and got a CPA firm to review his whole practice. And what they found was that just as many cases he had billed where there was no documentation, there was as many cases where he had not billed and had the documentation. So they sort of washed themselves out, okay? That the cases where he could have billed, but he didn't, and the cases where he did bill, but didn't have the documentation. And most probably the case would have been thrown out. But because of the wife's insistence, because the prosecutor was a very malicious person, ultimately there were 2 sessions in a group therapy session that he couldn't account for. And the total amount came to $28. And the judge somehow took a dislike to the situation, or him, the main witness who did the analysis lied and said she did this, she did that. That case was on 9/11, so the prosecutor said, see, even on a day like this, we have to prosecute these people because they're criminals. To cut a long story short, Dr. Maitroni, because of the stupidity of his lawyer, also ended up getting 3 years in federal prison. Fortunately, he contacted me, we did certain things, he's out, he's practicing, he did marry his case manager, did divorce his wife, and as we speak, he's living happily. And I did tell him I'll be discussing his case. And he said to please remind all the people who are listening that get a damn good lawyer, because that is the whole thing. Don't skimp on money at that time. That is not the time to try and save. He did get a lawyer who was not that very good, but he was reasonable. And Dr. Maitroni didn't think he would get into so many problems because he was aware that he's careless, but he was not a crook, that he knew that if he didn't have the documentation and bill, there were just as many sessions. He didn't bill, it was a mess, but he was not a criminal. But he said that I wish, looking back, I had gotten the lawyer that we got him ultimately, and now he's very happy and practicing. But I told him I would talk about his case and I would remind everyone here that the lawyer is the key to the whole thing. So we could go on and on, you know, people get into trouble because of, selling prescriptions. People get into trouble because the patient comes in and says, oh, my back is hurting so much. Lately, what the DEA and the investigators have started doing is acting as patients. They come in pretending to be patients, and they will give you a very complex set of problems, and they'll try to either get you to prescribe narcotics without examining them. Oh, my wife is waiting in the car and I'm in so much pain. If you just give me a few pain medicines, that's how they nail you. They get you to say things that, like I said in the beginning, that if you have done nothing wrong, you'll be exonerated. But if you've lied to the prosecutor or his investigator, then you could get into trouble. Remember to keep your mouth shut. You don't have to say anything. You're not obligated to answer any questions unless the judge says that you have to answer. Remember to get a lawyer. And most of all, remember this, which I want to emphasize. If you are going to practice in today's environment, you have to absolutely make sure that you have a team. And the team should consist of a local lawyer who, again, pick somebody nice, go near your office, preferably. So if some investigator shows up, someone from his office could come there. Give him $100 retainer and say, hey, I don't need your services, but just wanted to say hello and make sure that if I ever need help, you're there. Get a good healthcare lawyer and talk to him and say, I'm practicing, I have no problem, but I'd like to set up a relationship so that tomorrow, if I have a problem, I could do this. And get a good licensing lawyer, because often everything, even when it's over, hangs on your license. If you don't have your license, you will not be able to practice. And if you can't practice, you have no money. So how are you going to support yourself? And remember, this is not the time to save money. You have to spend wisely, but be prepared to spend the money to get the resources so that you can fight your case. Again, it's a very long topic, very detailed, convoluted topic. We have information on all of these things. If you go to API and you ask Ms. Kodali or Dr. Anupama for information, we'll be happy to pass it on to you. But don't become scared, don't become paranoid. It is a cost of doing business. And my God, unless you've done something crazy like the first case we talked about, you're not going to jail, whatever they say, and you're not gonna be the end of the world. You will be practicing again. So I'd like to end with that. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rakeshji. And we've got excellent comments in the chat box, which they've complimented your talk. This is something which I just started the talk with, and I sent emails to or text messages to everyone that this is something which we do not know what to do. This is something which is totally alien, and you have shared so much information, and you've put our minds at ease. I've got several questions which I'm going to get started on. And if you have any more questions, please ask. Ravi Kohli, our president-elect, he kicked off. He's a psychiatrist like you, sir, like you and Sid. So he says that sometimes prosecution seems selective, and there seems to be some political pressure and bias involved. Is it unethical for prosecutors to minimize or use delaying or intimidating tactics? We don't do this with our patients. So what is your thoughts on that?
You see, again, here's the thing. Once a problem starts, everything is very, very psychological. Like I said to you, why don't you get a letter Monday morning so that you have the whole week to contact the lawyer to do everything? It's sent Friday in a way that you should get it Friday at 11 o'clock, because when you get it and you call the number, no one's there. And all weekend you're stewing, what have I done? Did I do this? It's designed, in law school, they teach you intimidation is very important because they soften you up so that when you call Monday morning, no one's going, oh yeah, he was here, but he's gone off and he's not available. He'll call you Wednesday afternoon, okay? And the reason he'll call you is by then you're all, oh my God, what have I done? And your thing should be, you shouldn't even call him, You should give it to your lawyer, and your lawyer should call him 2 weeks later, So the thing is that, of course, they try to intimidate you. The other thing is this, that it is a very unfair system. It depends on who you are or where you are. I hate to say this, but a lot of us get into trouble. But a similar problem, I saw two doctors have a similar problem. One was a Caucasian, very attractive lady, and the other was one of our brothers. And she ended up getting a slap on the wrist, and this guy ended up actually with a huge fine and everything else. It is, no matter what they say, it is an unfair system, but it's the only system you've got. And only one thing is that they respect strength. They respect the fact that you have a damn good lawyer and you're going to fight back, because it's all about intimidation and making quick settlement and making you give up your license or get penalized, because then they can put in the paper that doctor was charged with this and that, and somewhere at the bottom it will say that the charge is not a conviction or something, but they'll put out these big press releases and beat their chest and say, Tarzan, we got you. But the fact is that you are not a victim, and if you have a good lawyer who knows how to deal with this, he will fight back.
This was, thank you so much for your answer. Actually, this was one of the questions which was raised by another doctor. The punishment for colored physicians are drastically different in medical boards, and he goes on to give an example and says that racism does exist in the medical justice system, and like you mentioned, that yes, it is there, but that's the best system we have. And in fact, I might also say that there is some degree of interstate racism even in India. One state to another state, there is a discrimination even in India, as we know. So here, that's the best what we have. And thanks for bringing that up.
Another point I want to make to that, Amit, I just want to tell you one thing which is very important, and I must emphasize this. So one of our Indian doctors here in Southern Illinois did get into trouble. And the way he got into trouble was that some of his staff reported that he was selling prescriptions or whatever. So he found out that it was his PA who was doing that. So, like we Indians, in a sense, I hate to say Indian, but in Indians, we do dadagiri. So he called the PA and he said, you listen, I'm going to fix you. You can't do this to me. I've hired you when you were nobody and I paid you well and you're doing this and I'm going to take care of you. The PA recorded it. The doctor won the case. He wasn't selling prescriptions. He wasn't doing anything. He was just a sloppy record keeper. He won his case, but they nailed him for witness tampering. And he went to jail for 3 years, So much as you have a tendency that, how can he do this? I paid him well, I did. please don't call any witness, don't call any employee, don't tell them what to say. I'm just reminding you that, hey, remember that day? Please don't do that. That is the stupidest thing, because someone records the call and in today's time, they can bring it back. You may win your case, but you will lose it. So don't do anything. Don't try to be too clever. As I said to you, just leave it to the attorney. Don't contact anybody. If somebody calls you, like in my case, the employee called me and I knew that the investigator was listening. So I said to her, thank you so much for your concern. You're so kind and I appreciate it. But now we have a problem and I just have to deal with it. And I wish you will tell the truth when it comes to it. And God bless you. And I put the phone down. I later discovered that actually it was a recorded call. The prosecutor and the guy was recording it because she was trying to say that you told me to do this, but I had never told her. I had no idea. I used to get stacks of papers, blank claim forms, and I would sign them and give them to her. And the joke I used to have is that one day when I'm going to be famous, I'll have practice giving autographs. So, just be careful about calling anybody or doing anything. Let your attorney handle it.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Actually, that just because my question is kind of similar to what you just now said, what are the laws regarding recording without the other person knowing? I know it
Yes.
varies from state to state. Can you just tell us that
Yes.
if somebody calls me, can I record that call?
So here's the thing I would suggest to you. First of all, if the state has a rule that one person who's party to a conversation can give permission and you can record it, it's okay. On the other hand, I would personally, and I'm not suggesting everybody does it, I would record it. So one thing that will happen is, yes, it will not be admissible in court, but at least you'll have the truth on record. So I would record it. I'd record all the calls. I'd do everything. And I would say to the person, by the way, and you can almost pretend that, your answering machine, say, thank you for calling Dr. Chandra. Just for educational and other purposes, we are recording these calls and then come on the line. So if you've informed the person and they have not objected, you can record it. But again, why do all that? Why get into all that? Because it shows a state of mind that you're being sneaky. The best thing is somebody calls you, say, please, I'm so sorry. Just talk to Mr. Jones, my lawyer, and leave it at that. Why get into all this, that you recorded something, now you're playing it for your attorney, but it's really inadmissible and so on. I'm telling you, at that point, you should just totally withdraw and let the attorney handle.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. Very nice to know. Going to another question by Satish Katula, who is the secretary of API. He has asked that does volume of patients you see raise a flag? Some of my colleagues see about 40 plus patients a day. By the way, he is an oncologist. Some of my colleagues see 40 patients a day, while others see an average of 20 a day. I know you alluded to that. You gave a little example of me with the board thing, but can you give a little bit more explanation based on Satish's question, please?
Yes. So look, there's no law against it. You could be a very efficient doctor and you see a patient every 10 minutes. And you know what? You have no social life, you have no home life, you don't take a lunch break, and you see 60 patients a day. So what? If you've documented it and you have charged correctly and been reimbursed for that, who cares? It can raise the volume because, like I showed you with the graphs, that if your colleagues are seeing 20 patients and you're seeing 16 patients, somewhere it will show up as a statistically significant factor. But just because it shows up doesn't mean you're committing a crime. Someone will come, show them the record, show them what you're doing. What can they do about it? You're free to practice as you want. You could see 2 patients a day. And if you're happy with that, you'll still show a statistical change. Who cares? It's a free country. You're free to practice as long as you're not doing anything illegal and you're documenting it and billing correctly. So no, you won't. But chances are, if you're out of the norm and you're not trying to game the system, you will show up somewhere. Someone will come in, but you know what? It's no big deal. Just do the right thing.
So great, great. Thank you so much. There's another very important question, which actually is also on my mind. I bet Dr. Avinash Gupta is asking for majority of the people here. You mentioned about the fact that you should consider keeping a specialized attorney on your retainer, paying him 120, 200. We'd all love to do that. I'd love to do that. Um,
Yeah.
I know that API is gathering a database, and you started doing that when you were Ethics and Grievances Chair.
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
the database of attorneys for the RP people to hire, and we'd like you to really go get back with Dr. Suresh Reddy, our Ethics and Grievances Committee Chair, who will be speaking in a little bit, and he'll be addressing something. He'll be telling you something. But what my question, or Dr. Avinash Gupta's question, is that what are the points we should consider before hiring an attorney as a retainer?
Okay. So here's the thing. The most important thing is that I would like to have an attorney who's close by. I mean, for example, the best healthcare attorney today is in Baltimore, Washington area. So if you have a case and you want him, you would hire him, but he would then have to get local counsel to appear and to do everything. So when you're saying that who is a good attorney, often the most expensive attorney with a corner office is not the best attorney. He's the best businessman, but he's not the best attorney. The way to find the best attorney is if you practice in, say, Maryland, go to the Maryland Licensing Board and go to the Maryland Medical Society and ask them that in the last 5 years, how many doctors have had what kind of problems, who was the attorney, and what was the outcome. Same thing, you go before the licensing board and say, look, how many doctors have been disciplined in the last 2 years? What were the problems they were disciplined for? And who was the attorney? And you'll clearly see outliers. I found this attorney, he had a one-man office in a very sort of shady part of town. He was a very nice guy. He didn't even charge me anything compared to my first attorney, who was a total idiot. And he just walked in, and in 3 days, we resolved the matter completely. So the search for the attorney is very important. And of course, having a local attorney who can be available if someone shows up at your office also is very important. It does not cost a lot. You know, if you have a lawyer near your office, take a bottle of wine or a piece of cake, write him a check for $100 and say, look, I practice here. We have all kinds of problems. I want to put you on a retainer because if there's an issue, would you come and help us, and get his cell number into it. A good healthcare attorney, pay him $500, say that I don't need you. I just want to come and meet you and have a cup of coffee. And of course, you'll be paying us so much per hour for that coffee and so on, but it's worth it. Get them to know what you do, get you to know him, get his number, and that's all it is. And a lot of them are very nice, they're knowledgeable people, and it gives you a peace of mind that if something happens, you have insurance. And it's a very low cost to get that insurance. And also remember, if he knows you and you're a good guy, often their fees are highly negotiable, even though they pretend, oh, it's fixed and it's 500. Everything in life, besides being born and the certainty of dying, everything in life is negotiable, and their fees are negotiable. So if you have a relationship with them and you develop rapport, believe me, you may pay him 500, it'll save you 5,000.
Great. I mean, that was actually a follow-up question of Dr. Gupta about healthcare attorney. Does it have to be local? Dr. Gupta, Dr. Chandra says that it's better to be local so that he can walk into your office and represent you if there is a Fed or somebody in your office. So we get that loud and clear.
But if you can't find a very good local healthcare attorney, because remember, it's a very specialized field, then find a local attorney who is around close to your office, and just use them as a bread and butter attorney, and have someone in another town or wherever on your retainer. And today's day, you can see him on Facebook. You can, even if you have a very high risk practice, go meet him, you know, and have a relationship. They'll be honored that you flew in or you drove in from somewhere to meet them, even though you don't have a problem. They will respect you that you're being proactive and doing all that. And as I said, you may spend a little money and time and effort when you're negotiating the fee. When you need them, you could save 10 times that.
Great, thank you. And everybody has congratulated your talk and how important that lawyer database will be helpful. So if you can get together with Suresh Reddy, who's going to be speaking in a little while, to get that thing together, that'd be awesome. So let me
So
just.
what I would suggest, I'm sorry, what I would suggest is that if you get me a list of people who are interested in finding lawyers. So if you can't find someone in one area, then you look as close as possible to that area. Also, my database is a little older, and you know, I haven't totally been updating it, but it is there. And I would definitely be able to pass something on to you or to Dr. Anupama so that there is something available. And again, if you have a problem, don't hesitate to reach out to us, you know, Amit or the president, and we can always work something out, you know, because the thing is that you're not alone. I know how it feels. You think that they're going to laugh at you, your colleagues won't respect you, but it's not true. I discovered afterwards that people do, you know, we all can get into the problem. None of us are unique. We all could get illness, we could get legal problems, and we have to support each other. So call us, get all the support that you can, and we'll point you in the right direction. I'll tell you how to negotiate the fees and to do everything. I'm putting this in a little booklet that what to do if you have a legal problem, and it'll be coming out soon. But honestly, it's not rocket science. It is a cost of doing business, and you have to be prepared for it. Just as you're prepared for the rewards, you know, you have a lovely home, you have a nice car, you have the life you have to be prepared that this is what goes with it. Chances are nothing will happen, but if something happens, at least you know there's a solution. You're not going to hide your head in the sand and pretend it's nothing. We respect you. It doesn't reflect on you as a doctor or as a person. It's a problem just like anything else. Somebody gets cancer. Why did they get it? Why didn't you? I mean, you know, it's what it is, and we respect each other and will help you.
Great. Actually, I will. We've got plenty of other questions, but I think this is a good time for Dr. Suresh Reddy to come in and give a talk to you about the Ethics and Grievance Committee. He's the chair of Ethics and Grievance Committee. Suresh, Vijay, if you can unmute Suresh for the time being. Then we have Dr. Madhya also who wants to make a comment. Then I will come back to questions. We have got half an hour of this valuable time with Dr. Rakesh Chandra. Remember, he's a $500 an hour attorney himself, and he's
no. I'm not a practicing attorney. It's enough being a psychiatrist and addictologist. I'm not a practicing attorney. I don't think I want to take that on at this time. I'm more into bringing mental health to people who can't afford it, and we're working on stuff like that so that everyone has access to health care. There's such a shortage of psychiatrists, and I want to make sure that in the state of Illinois, where I am in the southern state, that we make it accessible to everyone. And it's not a luxury, it is a necessity. So we're working on that. So I'm not 500 an hour attorney. Just a phone call will be enough. I may not call you right away, but I will promise you I always return my calls.
No, Dr. Chandra, I know that you're a psychiatrist. I was just making the tongue-in-cheek comment. Dr. Suresh Reddy has requested a couple of minutes to talk. So, Vijaya, can you unmute Suresh? And after Suresh is done, please give it back to me, because I've got plenty of other questions which I have to ask. But because you brought this lawyer database thing up, I think we'll have Suresh to come in and talk. Go ahead, Suresh.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Dr. Chandra, for this enlightening talk. This is one area where we are extremely weak. And this year, as chair of ethics committee, we have put a goal on that creating a database, just like you did several years ago. We would like to update that. And three things. One thing is, I would like to introduce my we already started doing some work. Dr. Mukesh Nigam, Rai Chaudhary, Dr. Sankur Rao, and Tarak Vasavada. We are trying to make a list so that whenever there is the problem is, whenever people come to us, they usually come in the late stage when everything is all done. They say API is not helping us. API, can you do that? Can you do this? What good is API if we can't even help its own members? That is true. But as you know, all these legal cases, everything starts with the first step. You do one first step wrong, you are done. You are going the wrong path. So that's where as you said, shut your mouth, take the first step very carefully. And the important thing is, like, even if I know today, if I get into trouble, I don't even know who is the best lawyer. So that is my goal for this year, and I would officially invite you to be my senior advisor. Hopefully, you'll accept that position for the committee. This is very. I don't want to take too much time because people would like to hear you more than me. But I will talk offline. But for the members, sake of members, this year our promise to you is we'll come up with a good 20 to 30 lawyers in the country, and whichever state you are. And as Dr. Chandra said, try to get some retainer so that you'll have the phone numbers handy. As soon as you get into trouble, that's the first phone call you make. And not if they are not in your state, they can always find somebody who can at least do the paperwork part in your state. So thank you, Dr. Chandra. I'll be talking to you a lot more, and I'm sure there's a lot more questions. And members, at the end of this year, I promise you, you will have a very, very good database so that you can sleep soundly. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Dr. Rakeshji, would you be kind enough to accept his offer?
I would be honored, and I will send you what I have. I will also send you the name of a couple of lawyers who are sort of semi-retired. I can think of one particular lawyer who's based in Florida. He tells me that he's given up everything and he spends his time fishing. But every time I send him a case, he'll call me and say, oh, you know, why did you do this? But he's a dogged lawyer. He fights the case. And the last case I referred to him, he just called me before I was coming to India to say that they did revoke the doctor's license, but it was only for 1 week. He told the doctor to go to Antigua and enjoy a holiday and come back from wherever, and his license would be reinstated. So yes, there are people like that, and I'd be honored to accept your offer and help you just with putting together something. And like I said, please, as Dr. Gupta said, you know, don't get into this thing that you've surrendered your license. I know a doctor, they came in, he gave his DA license that day. What are you left to fight with then? Just say, I'm a poor, ignorant doctor. I don't know anything. My lawyer will be contacting you. End of story. Don't say anything more. And like I said, if you have the lawyer, call the guy, say, hey, guy, you know, remember we talked and we met you. I have this problem. Send the letter to him. Keep your mouth shut and don't answer.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I have got Dr. Madhya.
Yeah,
If you, Dr. Madhya, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and
yeah, sure.
make the comment, and then we'll go back to questions. I've got a lot of questions. We've got half an hour to go still. So please go ahead, Dr. Madhya, after you make the comment. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and very interesting and very good presentation, Dr. Chandra. I'm
Thank
giving
you.
my personal experience. I have served as State Medical Board of Ohio for 7 years and as a president for 2 years. And I have seen all sort of cases. First of all, somebody made a comment that there is a racism. I guarantee you, at least I can tell you in Ohio, it never happened. That you are Indian or color, they never, about lawyer, I used to spend, and still today, anybody gets into trouble, not only Ohio, but so many doctors who knows I have served in the State Medical Board and how to deal with. The best way to find the right lawyer is not nationally. As you mentioned, Dr. Chandra, if somebody asked me in state of Ohio, somebody asked me, there are 3 lawyers comes in front of State Medical Board most of the time, and I say hire one of those 3.
Yes.
And they are the best lawyer if you want to go in front of State Medical Board.
Yes.
In short, what I'm saying is, right now I'm being sued in federal government because one Pakistani doctor, spine surgeon from Cincinnati, did lot of bad things, and we took 1 year to take away his license. He left. He left the country. So there is a 200 patients suing me as a president of State Medical Board, you know, that why you didn't take his license early, whatever it is. But I am willing to help Dr. Suresh Reddy, please let me know if I can be any help. And I think we should provide these services to our API member. And when who was the president, Dr. I think Dr. Shah, API president, I mean, that time he appointed a committee of 4 people, and I was one of them who had experience with state medical board. So I think there should be, anytime any doctor gets into trouble, first thing they should do is get our advice who have experience, and then we can help them, because most of the time they get scared and they do some stupid thing before they get the help. So I'm ready to help Dr. Reddy or whosoever. Please let me know if I can be any help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madhya. That's great. People who are actually in boards, who have been who have been members of medical boards. We've got several around the country. I think, Suresh, you should also ask them to, because they are the best people who are the best lawyers who represent physicians in front of them. I think that's a very good idea. Thank you, Dr. Madhya.
That's a very good point also, because you see, you've seen it from the other end and you know who's a good lawyer and not. And I think the names of those 3 lawyers definitely should be in a database, because you know that they've done a good job. So the fact is, as you said, though, people get so scared, they become so frightened that they will surrender everything. What's the point of coming and talking to API and doing everything? The other problem that I found, which is very sad in a way, that doctors, when I was on the Ethics and Grievance Committee, they would expect API to pay for the legal defense. Oh, I don't have any money. I don't have anything. You know, that's not correct. You discover they have lots of assets, they have lots of things, but they somehow feel that API should take over the legal defense and do on. API can only advise you, but you are the one who has to pay for it. And it is not a time where you should skimp or whatever, take a loan, take a second mortgage, but fight the case and be prepared to spend money. You're not going to get away before you spend a couple of $100,000. If it's a big case, maybe 50, 60,000. And now a lot of the your malpractice insurance carries administrative insurance. So if your license is involved, they'll cover it. So look very carefully at your malpractice coverage. Sometimes they will cover non-malpractice administrative issues and so on. And a lot of the policies, I know for psychiatrists, they cover up to $50,000 if your license is involved. So there are a lot of things, but it's not the time to hide yourself and pretend nothing happened and that it hasn't happened to anybody else and you're a bad person. That's not true. But also don't expect that API will take care of you, they'll pay the legal bill, or people will spend a lot of time. People want to help you, but my God, you know, they can't take over the problem. But just remember one thing, you're not the first one to have the problem, you're not the last, and you will survive it. And get on with your life.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, I can second that for you. 2 things. One is, yes, my malpractice insurance covers board and also covers Medicare fraud issues. So those are the things which are covered by my. In fact, they also actually, my malpractice insurance company also offered to cover cybersecurity threat also, so several, if your practice is held at ransom. So please check with your malpractice insurance companies. They actually have policies for a little extra amount to cover those. Also, let me also tell you, I was the president, chair of Ethics and Grievances Committee during my time. We handled a lot of these cases. My committee was great, and we had, and that was the main problem which we had, that a lot of people think that just becoming an API member, API can handle the legal costs. We cannot handle your legal costs. We can guide you to a proper attorney, but the legal cost, API is, it's not fair on the other members. Even if we could afford it, it's not fair on the other members of API who became members that we spend money on one particular person's case. So that is something which people should understand, that we are there to help guide you, but we necessarily cannot cover your thing. Thank you very much. I've got a few more questions. I'll go ahead.
One more point, Amit, I would just like to make, which is very important. If you have a legal problem and it is a problem which you're fighting, API has the right to file something called an amicus brief or a friendly brief, outlining the problem, outlining the situation, and showing support. You know, if the president of API, who is a 35,000 strong body, sends an amicus brief saying that, look, this is a common problem, this is what happens, and we take this stand, it makes a big difference. And that API and myself and other people are happy to do. I know people think it doesn't make a difference, but it does. When they get a letter from someone like this saying that, look, this is our stand, this has happened to our members, and we are filing this amicus brief to support this case, makes a big difference. It doesn't cost anything except for an attorney to draw up the brief, and for the Ethics and Grievances Committee chair to sign it, the president to sign it, makes a big difference and can help the person a lot. So if you have a problem and you've come to API, in addition to everything else, consider getting them to file an amicus brief, which means a friendly brief.
Dr. Chandra, thank you for that. But in the past, we have done amicus brief. It doesn't really hold very much ground in hospitals and boards. It's actually much better, I think, in the judicial system. But my experience. So let me go over a few more questions. We have got about 20 minutes left. One question is again from Dr. Ramurthy, is that if one works for a network, are they off the hook for such fraud investigations? What about personal culpability?
Right. So often what happens is it depends on your relationship with the network. Because if you're an employee, then you are off the hook in a sense, because ultimately there is something called respondeat superior. So I could explain that in a different way, that suppose you have a car and you have a driver, and the driver is driving the car under your employment umbrella, and he hit someone, then of course, personally, there will be some liability if he did something criminal, but he would not be charged as much as you would, because you are the employer and he's working for you, and he's not doing the billing, he's not doing anything, he's just following your policies. So if you're showing that you're following the employer's policies, then the liability is his. But again, you could be personally liable if you did something which was out of the scope of the mandate that the employer had. You purposely went away from it or deviated from what they had, but you would not be as liable as possible. And that's what I said to you, that if you don't have a stomach for dealing with all this and so on, join a network and become an employee, join the VA, but you're not so responsible then. But yes, if you do a criminal act, you will be personally responsible, but most of the time you will not have to go through that. It's them who will have to provide everything and pay the fines and so on.
Great. Well, the other question is that, a comment by Dr. Mata Arun says that please remember the problems come within with a disgruntled employee or patient, people who actually do that. So is there anything we can do? I mean, especially when the employee is fired, they put it in social media, they go and complain, and they do what's called whistleblower thing.
Yes. So one of the things you should let your employees know, and that is that you're a very good employer, you're very fair, but also if they harm you in any way, that you will take action. Because see, if some employee does something to you and it's not true, you have the right to go after them. The thing is, you will get nothing, because often they don't have the money and they don't have anything, but they will do that, and if you want to fight, I often tell people that, which is not correct, but I say that I have a scorched earth policy. And my policy is this, that I don't try to harm anybody. I try to help people. But my God, if you come after me and sue me frivolously, then I will sue you back. And you can do that. And I will spend everything, but I will ruin you also, because I try not to do anything wrong. And if you're just doing it for the heck of it, it's a problem. And I'll tell you about a case that I handled for API in regard to this. And the case is, very briefly, I'll tell you, there was a doctor in Upper New York, and he was a pediatrician, and he was a very nice guy, very caring. And so one of his patients came in to see him with the little daughter. And so after he saw the patient and they were leaving, he patted the girl on the back and said, "Beta, you're such a pretty girl. I hope everything goes well and you become a doctor like me or something." And they went away, and the mother was looking for Xanax or Valium or something. And of course, he didn't give it to her. Long story short, he discovered that she'd been getting a lot of prescriptions and he abruptly cut her off. And so she sued him. And what she sued him was, she said that he fondled my daughter as he was leaving. He touched her on her bottom and he fondled her. And you would think that that's ridiculous. There was no nurse present. It was a very busy day. The nurse had gone to get something. And so they actually went to the state's attorney, they filed a case. And what happened is that he listened to my advice. We talked for a long time every day. He was very upset and he said, "How can this be? I'm not a pedophile. I don't do things like this." Because if he got convicted, he would be labeled a sex offender and he would never be able to practice. Plus he would have to register. So anyway, we found an investigator in Arizona, and this guy was very good. He came to the town and he went and interviewed this woman's neighbors and families. He couldn't interview her because that is illegal, but he interviewed everybody. And one of the friends said that, she met me the other day and she said, "There is my Porsche. I'm going to be buying a Porsche." And this lady said, "How will you, you work as a cleaning lady and all, how are you going to get a Porsche?" And she said, "I found the right chicken." And they had a good laugh. And so he recorded that, and when they played that back in the thing and brought him in as a witness, the case completely collapsed. So people do come up with all sorts of things. To us, we are normal people, but to someone else, you're a rich, sitting duck. And of course, they will try to exploit you in many ways. And a lot of people, somebody else would have said, "Okay, look, don't file a case, don't do anything. Why don't you take 10,000 or why don't you take 5,000 and settle?" Don't do anything like that, because then they'll blackmail you and make your life miserable. But this is an actual case in New York in 2000. You should go and look it up. It's a matter of public record. So I'll tell you, it's Dr. Singh, the state of New York versus Dr. Singh. So ultimately he did win and it was thrown out and so on. And the woman, but then what I would have done in his place, he didn't do anything. I would have sued the woman and I would have garnished her wages for the next 20 years, just to show that we are not victims. We too can fight back. And if you do things like that to us, we should fight back. But we are very nice. And when we win our case, we say, "Oh, let's forget the whole thing," and so on. But my thing is, if someone has done you harm, whether it's the state's attorney or anybody else, file a case against them. What does it take? Put them through the mill too. But human nature, we Indians are very kind and we say, "Chodo, I don't want to deal with this," and all. But if I would certainly, so I tell them I have a scorched earth policy. If I've done something wrong, come and tell me. I'll be happy to compensate or admit my mistake or whatever. But if you sue me frivolously, I will sue you back. I've never been sued.
Awesome. I mean, these things give us a lot of confidence. We've got several questions. We only have about 10 minutes to go. So if you could keep I've got about another 20 questions to go to. So let's do it quick. One is Dr. Mukesh Nigam. He says that insurance company covers attorney costs on malpractice cases, and that's usually enough. And I'm not sure why we should have a local attorney if you have a good malpractice insurance. So can you briefly answer that?
Okay, so one thing is that you have to remember, if you have an insurance attorney, so he's right that a lot of insurance companies nowadays offer a policy which will cover you for licensing, will cover you for so many things. But the reason you should have your own attorney is this, because remember, if someone is paying his fee, who is his loyalty going to ultimately be with? The insurance company is not offering you this out of the goodness of their heart. It's good business. And ultimately, 90% of cases get settled by a plea agreement or by some sort of consent agreement. But often the insurance company attorney's tendency will be to save the insurance company a lot of money. Now, if your policy says that they cannot settle without your written consent, then it's okay. But sometimes that is not there. And so when a situation comes in that you could fight the case for another 3 years and maybe ultimately you win, or you could pay so much and settle it today, then more often than not, they are loyal to who's paying for that. That's why you need your own attorney who can say, no, it's not in the doctor's interest to settle and we are not going to settle. So if you have that policy which says that without your consent they can't settle, then it's a very good thing. But again, it comes down to question of spending money. I mean, I would get a local attorney because when the DEA shows up, I had my local attorney, he was around in the area. It's not a very big area. If I'd called him, if they'd acted funny, he would have come right away and stood there. You'll be surprised how the behavior of these people changes when a lawyer is standing there and when you're there. It's completely different. You know, if you see this movie Cops or this program, when they have it all recorded and they're thinking they're all acting, sir, you have done this. Otherwise, their whole demeanor and attitude is totally different. So you should have a local attorney. It doesn't cost anything, a couple of $100. When you have such a big practice, what does it matter to spend a little bit of money? Often it pays off in huge dividends. So don't skimp on all that. It's a cost of doing business. I have a local attorney, he's around. Even if a cop stops me for speeding, I say, sir, I don't want to argue with you. I'm a doctor. I was very busy on the phone trying to make sure my patient's life is saved. And if you want to give me a ticket, it's fine. And he did give Dr. Sid a ticket. And he said, I don't want to hear anything, doctor, not you're getting a ticket. And he gave it and Sid just turned it over to him. And 2 weeks later, he got it thrown out. So it's worth having a local attorney, even if you have a healthcare lawyer sitting in Chicago or sitting in New York, it doesn't matter. A local attorney knows everyone. He knows the judicial system. Your case is going to be handled locally, and local jurisdiction is very important. He knows the temperament of the judges. He knows so many things. And one point I want to make is that, you know, the judge has a lot of discretion. And so you should understand where your case may ultimately be fought. You need local coverage.
Okay, great. So again, like I said, we've got a lot of questions. One is Dr. Gupta. He's a cardiologist. Gets requests for prescribing Ambien, Percocets, and other medication. We do that all. Get those requests all the time. A guy comes to me and asking for a high blood pressure medication. As a urologist, I feel uncomfortable in prescribing that. So should we listen to them, or should we not do that? That may be not like a medical legal question, but just can you give a couple of sentences on that?
Sure. Why would you not do that? You are a doctor. I mean, look, if someone came to you and said, prescribe Xanax, okay? I mean, if you've examined the person, you have a chart on him, you examined him, you did a physical, you did a mental status, and you found that, yes, 2 weeks ago, he was kicked out of his job and now his wife is leaving him and he's so anxious, he can't sleep, he can't eat. Why would you not prescribe for him? Just because the DEA says it's illegal, it's not, you're a doctor and you're supposed to treat people. That is what I'm saying. You shouldn't get scared if you're doing the right thing. On the other hand, if a patient stops by your office and he comes up to your front door and says, hey, I'm very anxious, I need Xanax, and you don't examine him, you don't do anything, give him Xanax, that is a crime because you're selling a prescription. But if as a doctor, you examine the patient, do what is the right thing to do, document everything, have a chart, give him a little bit of Xanax, so what? The DEA is not doctor. They don't have doctors in the DEA who will come and say, no, it was wrong or it was right. If you do the right thing, it's fine. You could give Ambien, you can give. Now, again, if they say Xanax, don't give him 2 milligrams 4 times a day. But if you give him 0.5 milligrams twice a day to deal with anxiety and say, go see your therapist or talk to someone, what's wrong with that? You shouldn't be scared. Just be sure that what you're doing is correct.
I agree. In fact, there was also another comment that most VA physicians are reluctant to prescribe narcotics. Narcotics have become a big news because a lot of doctors who get tricked into this narcotic thing, they are big news items and people are scared. But like you said, if you document why you're using it and you make sure that you use it rightly, I hear you that you shouldn't be scared because that's something which you as a doctor are are allowed to do.
You know, you do the right thing. Take a history, do the examination, make a proper chart, examine him, and give your reasons. Now, they could argue with you over the reasons, but that's not a crime. I mean, you know, your peer, in some peer review, they could say, I wouldn't have prescribed it. But on the other hand, it's your judgment as a doctor, so they can't argue, and then you should not be scared. But I know that people are scared that there are people who are genuinely hurting and in pain, and they won't prescribe because they don't want the DA to come after them. DA doesn't care.
Yeah, the few minutes left and a couple of minutes left. I don't know. I have not frankly gone over all the questions. This is such an important topic and such a well done thing. And I don't know whether I can request Anupama to give us 5 or 10 minutes extra, if that's okay, because I have got all these questions which are really are really good questions.
Okay, 1 minute. Dr. Atul Shah wanted to ask something. So please, doctor, what is your question?
Exactly. So please, you want to unmute, Atul? I was looking at your question and then I read that. And I, go ahead, Atul. Can you?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
I hope not to take much time. Gentlemen, ladies, and of course, very revered president. I admire that she has not said much, and this is the sign of leadership. Thank you. But I think, Dr. Chandra, you got tremendous experience. And I mean, I've been practicing since back in England and US since 1973 when I got into training. I did ECTs and everything else. And we fought the case on ECT, like everybody, yes, like you said, you always come across that. I think the key issue is that coming to the latest, I mean, trusting lawyers is not easy, for one thing. No matter what you say. I mean, look at the screen, silver screen, and the image of lawyers. So you can't just simply trust a lawyer, because when the charges mount, you don't even know who to ask. And so, well, can you oversee? Is this correct or what? So that's one thing. And secondly, prescription of Xanax and Ambien, very important aspect. Unless you are capable of making a note that this patient has not been on anything, you take UDS, and unless you're willing to continue monitoring that, you say, well, okay, I'll give you Xanax, but you better go see a psychiatrist because I can't continue to prescribe. So that's the bottom line.
Right.
So Ambien, Xanax are very common in common practice in India. But I think in US of A today, as Dr. Chakravarti rightly said, that there is a problem with the prescription medications, and it's just, especially with the opiate crisis. I think you would all agree that we got to be very cautious in how we start prescription and be abruptly end. Of course, you're going to be liable. You can't just simply prescribe for 2 months and let patients deal with it because you think that this is not right to continue. So you say, well, go to somebody else. You need to make an arrangement from day one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Amit,
go ahead.
made a very good point, which I do want to emphasize. You're absolutely right. You cannot trust lawyers. You cannot trust anybody but yourself. But there are two things you have to remember. One is common sense. You're a practicing physician. You're an intelligent, educated person. If the guy comes to you with some weird charges or weird something, you have the right to question it. The other thing is that just as we get a second opinion from a doctor, tomorrow you go and the doctor says, hey, Dr. Shah, you need a transplant. Okay. You're not going to jump in just because it's a doctor and said it. You'll get a second, maybe a third opinion. The same way with your legal case, you can get a second opinion, you can get a third opinion, you pay a fee, somebody will examine the whole process up to that point. They'll examine the charges, they'll examine how much the lawyer has taken from you, what have they provided. So if you're uncomfortable, you can do that. But remember, ultimately, it's your case and it's your money. And people forget common sense. You're right, they then start trusting the lawyer completely. And they do win the case, but they end up paying a huge amount of money. So getting a second opinion, getting a third opinion sometimes is very important. And one person who I found very useful for getting an opinion is going to the local law school and asking for the dean or somebody like that who's more academic, but has knowledge to review something, or looking for a senior lawyer, or a retired judge. Sometimes they'll be able to review the case for a fee. And sometimes they don't even charge, they're happy to help you. So getting a second or third opinion, sometimes if you're uncomfortable with your legal case, is important, as well as you can talk to RP members, people who have been through this, can guide you that this is unreal, this is real, this is too much, this is too little. Because like I said to you, legal fees and legal services also it's a service and it's negotiable. If you don't pay the guy and he doesn't have a client, he's getting nothing. So they are willing to negotiate the fee, but you are in control, your common sense, don't abandon that, and be sure to get a second opinion as you would in any serious medical case.
Great, thank you. Again, like I said, we have got plenty of other questions which I could not answer that, but I will. The chat box is available to Dr. Rakesh Chandra, and I will request him to kind of personally text you his answers if you want to, if when he gets in the next week or so, whenever he gets time. Dr. Ravi Kohli, who is our president-elect, he would like to say a few words before I close. But more importantly, before he comes on board, I want to announce our next month CME, which will be equally great. I'm going to assure you. So next month's CME is on October 16th, Saturday. It's called World Restart Day, and there'll be two speakers, Dr. Enes, Dr. Amit Khera, the cardiologist, and moderator will be Dr. Brahma Sharma. And this is a very appropriate day, so that rather than doing it on the second Saturday of each month, which we have usually do our CMEs, we actually are moving it to October 16th, which is the third Saturday, just because that coincides with this important date. So please keep your calendars marked. It'll be again 12 noon Central Time. And if there's any changes or anything, please watch out for the flyers. And I'll have Dr. Kohli, Dr. Ravi Kohli, please speak a few words, and then I'll have Dr. Anupama come and give the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandra, for your spellbinding talk. I can see all the people's faces, that they're all watching in awe at your presentation. You showed a lot of compassion and common sense. I know we panicked during a lawsuit and we make mistakes right in the beginning, like Dr. Suresh Reddy said. That kind of starts in the wrong path. But anyway, thank you so much. We want you to come back again for another presentation. Looking at the other side of the way, how to protect ourselves better, just not through the lawyers, but how we can document and practice better. And I'll just let my president finish the concluding remarks. Thank you again, all the members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Dr. Chandra and Chandra, both of you, for being with us. Valuable points, and I think every one of us have learned something out of this talk, and take-home points like be vigilant, not to do any mistakes. By the way, first of all, but what we are not, spared, So anyone can go through this once in a lifetime of their practice. So I think good to know these points. So Dr. API recognizes Dr. Rakesh Chandra, MD, JD, LLM, for his contributions as an API CME speaker and welcomes him as a member of API Distinguished Speakers Club. This is from Dr. Anupama, President, API, Amit Chakravarti, Chair of CME Committee, September 11th, Oak Brook, Illinois, USA. And the other speaker, we only heard a little bit from him. I expected a little bit more from him. API recognized Sid Chandra, MD, for his contributions as
Thank you very much.
And welcomes him as a member of API Distinguished Speakers Club from all of us. Thank you so much. And we look forward for every one of you to join our CME sessions. A lot of effort put to get excellent speakers. Next month, are very renowned speakers from Harvard and a lot of research background. So please be tuned and please look at our newsletters. We send a lot of information in our newsletters to our members. We communicate. If you don't get any emails from API, please let the API office know about that you are not getting newsletters. So that way we are in communications. I think communication is the key, how we communicate with members, and we look forward for your encouragement too from, so that we can perform our best. So thank you and have a good weekend.
I'm glad. I'm great. Thank you for also letting. I want to just mention that there are a lot of people who will hear about this wonderful lecture and will be kicking themselves for missing it. So for them, this recording will be available in 1 to 2 days on the API website. So please, if anybody asks, please let them know that even if they've missed it, they can hear a recording of this. And thank you again for
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us. We really appreciate it. And I'm always available, and API is always available to its members, because we are here as an organization. If we stand together, we succeed. And if we go alone, we will not be as successful. Don't be scared. We're all in this together. We are all going to make it. And we are already very successful, and we'll be more successful.
And thank you again, Dr. Chandra, both Dr. Chandras, but basically Dr. Rakesh Chandra, right now it's 12:30 a.m. for you, or almost 1 o'clock for you in India. And he had to go to India because of to visit his mother. And after this talk was already set, and he kindly consented to join from India at this late hour. Thank you again very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for
One more
having me.
talk in future, and thanks for being our advisor for API on this particular thing we are working on already. We had one meeting already from the ethics committee, but this is such a good surprise to us today that a good collection of database of API legal attorney. So I think that's a useful resource for us as well. So thanks a lot for that offer to us.
My pleasure. Thank you. And let's make API strong and successful, because it's a great organization.
Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.